The Hustleshare podcast is sponsored by One CFO, the Philippines' leading fractional CFO services provider for startups, scale-ups, and SMEs. Experience the power of tech-enabled, efficient, affordable, and expert-led fractional CFO services. Let One CFO handle your finances so you can focus on growing your business. Book your free CFO consultation today.
Why this information is not available anywhere else? There's multiple different reasons, but I can build a platform that connects it, goes straight to the source, makes it available in real time, checks its quality in real time, and actually rewards everyone for sharing information in. So it's a pretty novel concept, both for credit bureaus internationally, but particularly for the Philippines, which combines data monetization with credit information exchange.
Welcome to Hustleshare, the podcast that features the daily grinds of unique hustlers around the world to show not our differences, but that our hustles are very much alike. Now here's your host, Ronster Baetiong.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Share Podcast. Again, we have a super founder from our friends Kung Kaya Founders. So big shout out to Raya Buentuceso and Henry of Kaya Founders who recommended one of their latest investments this year. And again, when Kaya invests, you have nothing but respect because it's not easy to get past that IC and get past to everything else. But before we get carried away, let's welcome to the show the co-founder and CEO of LenderLink, Mr. Christo Georgiev. Whoop, whoop. Welcome to the show, Christo.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So again, I hope I didn't butcher the name. Did I say it correctly?
Absolutely.
All right. There you go. That's amazing. Again, super duper excited about what you guys do. And I love it when we get the expat founders in the Philippines because we need more. You know, people always think that, oh man, why are these expats getting our resources? No, that's not the case. We need more people. Doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, what round or ship you're from. We need to solve Filipino problems. And if there's people that are willing to do that, doesn't matter where they're from, as long as they can solve the problem, there's enough fish for everyone. So that's what's interesting. But I need to ask you the $1 million question. Christo, what's your hustle?
Well, that is indeed the $1 million question. And thank you for having me on the show, Ronster. And thanks to the guys from Kaya for making the introduction. So my current hustle is called LenderLink. It's a credit information aggregator. Basically, we're building the operating system for credit information, particularly in developing markets. The Philippines struggles from several different deficiencies in the credit information space. But the biggest one, undoubtedly, is the fact that the majority of Filipinos don't borrow from traditional banks or financial institutions.
Yep.
As an end result, their financial performance or financial history typically doesn't get covered by traditional credit bureaus.
Nope.
And then that means that a big chunk of your fellow Filipinos don't get access or struggle a lot to get access to formal source of credit. This has historically been solved by digital lenders, more recently by digital banks. And what our company does is we connect to the data sources that actually Filipinos borrow from. What that means, we link lenders with other lenders, we link lenders with collection agencies, with private credit bureaus. Basically, we find the information at its source and then serve it through a unified platform to banks, financial institutions, digital lenders, buy now, pay laters that want to underwrite risk more profitably, that want to find out who are going to be their good borrowers and people that have long-standing financial reputation, give them better access to credit products, as well as weed out which are the guys that are likely to take the money and go away.
That is super important. So I'm just going to go on tangent a little bit and actually double down here. Recently, I went through just like any startup founder, right? We all through a credit crunch personally. So you have to make ends meet while you make ends meet for the company. So I was like, I was having some liquidity issues. So I said, shit, okay, I don't want to borrow from family and whatnot. This is just a small amount. So the way I was able to bridge it was through all these small e-banks, digital banks, and also
Yeah.
loading platforms. Also because I was curious what it would be like to be like everyone else. To how what's the lend or borrowing process for them. So I started lending from, borrowing from digital wallets and digital banks. Got a few there. Got a few from those loan apps like One Cash, Digital, and all these things and all that. But after the KYC, I'm like, how the hell do they assess it? It's like I can be a scammer. Obviously, I paid it off right away, right? Because I don't want the the interest, which can be
You don't
super
want to enter
outrageous,
my database.
right? You don't want them to do that. So I was able to mount it up, and it's the differences are so stark. Like there are apps that are like, all right, they didn't do KYC much, but my God, the interest rate was like daily. There are some that are much more like the banks, or like much more realistic, like a normal loan, which is great. But here's what I understand. Literally, I was this is not because I wanted to check out LenderLink. I went to an app. I'm not gonna mention who because there might be the competitor. To look at my credit score, traditional credit score from TransUnion.
Mhm.
So I did those borrowing probably a couple months ago, and my theory was like, will this affect my credit score? Will this improve it? Because I was able to pay it off. I was basically able to prove from every single platform that I borrowed from that I'm a good borrower. And I looked at it, and it didn't really move as much. I'm like, what the hell? What my objective was to earn my stripes and tell the bank that, yo, you can trust me more.
Yeah.
And I look at it, and none of them materialize, especially in these little apps that I borrowed from. And am I correct that that's the problem you're trying to solve here?
Correct. Very much so. So there is general lack of interconnectedness in the credit space, which means, the CAC, the Credit Information Corporation in the Philippines, which is the government public-private credit bureau.
Yep.
It has improved quite a lot over the last 5-6 years, but still work in progress.
Yep.
Most of the time, financial institutions actually do submit information to it, but it appears with a significant delay. Some of the records eventually cannot get matched to others. There is also, in general, a time lag between the time the information is submitted and it becomes available. All in all, works okay, but not great. TransUnion, very well that you put it, great company. They aggregate information for credit card holders in the Philippines.
Yep.
So if you have a credit card, by the way, by definition, you would be in the top 5% of the country because, credit card penetration is pretty low in the Philippines.
Correct.
TransUnion has information about all the credit card holders in the Philippines, but doesn't aggregate information from any digital lender.
Dude, none of them was there. All these transactions that I just did.
So from the perspective of someone checking your TransUnion score, whether you borrowed from 1 or from 100 lenders, whether you paid back all the loans or you ran away with the money of all the digital lenders, doesn't matter. And that's the problem we're solving. Essentially, we're partnering with the financial institutions that wouldn't be generally on the CAC or with TransUnion, and we kind of fill in the gaps that the traditional credit bureaus in the country don't satisfy.
And that's absolutely correct, because now you zero in, and the loan amounts are small, like 3,000, 5,000. That's why I was like, I just wanted to really see what it was like coming from the normal Filipino point of view, because these are the things that majority of these loans they do is to make ends meet, right? Like, this for my child's allowance or whatever. These are the things that make ends meet, as long as you're able to pay off and whatnot. But surprisingly, when I looked at my credit score, none of them was there, and wow. So now I understand what you guys do. But before we get carried away, I need you to buckle up real quick, because before we do a deep dive here, we have to go all the way back to understand your origin story, because we're gonna have to ride the Hustleshare time machine. All right. And we are back. all the way to Sofia, Bulgaria. So again, prior to the show, it's like which country you're originally from. But what I want to find out, Christo, is that what was it like growing up? Because I'll be very honest. There's only one Bulgarian that I know. His name is Rusev, or AKA Miro. He's a wrestler from WWE. I like him because he might have one of the best back tattoos ever. And I was like, I want one of those. It's a nice back tattoo. But yeah, that's the only thing I know as much in Bulgaria. But what was it like growing up in Bulgaria? And what was your first influences to hustling that you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, Bulgaria, particularly the time I grew up, I was born 1987. So now almost ancient history compared to today.
Yep.
From today's perspective. Right after, like a few years after I was born, Bulgaria was not formally part of the Soviet Union, but it was very closely influenced by the Soviet Union.
Got it.
So communism fell, democracy is in, market economy, all the good stuff the country needs to go through. Which for myself as a kid I wasn't really affected by it. It was a lot more difficult, I suppose, for our parents and grandparents' generation. Mm-hmm. But I do remember that in maybe my first 10, 11 years, like nobody's really poor, meaning living on the street or not having food on the table. But nobody has more than anyone else. That's
classic communism for you.
classic communism. So that was kind of the context of my growing up, and me and my family were fortunate enough to be able to travel a little bit more at a relatively early age. Which, by the way, as a former communist or communist affiliated country, it's very, very difficult to do so.
Right.
It was really difficult at the time. So I managed to spend a little bit of time in Switzerland, a little bit of time in Germany. And I had from a very early age, a very clear comparison of how it looks like in a country where there was, no communism, and in a country where there was. Fast forward 10, 15 years, the country has changed tremendously. It's part of the European Union. Now it's GDP, pretty much all the health indicators have grown through the roof. Nice. And it's a really, really good place to live and do business in, with the caveat that it's still a relatively small market. The country is about 6 million people. So it's a decent, mid-sized, average market nowadays. When I was growing up, totally different.
That is amazing. And again, I love the context that you said there, because what people understand is in the Philippines, like, yeah, we've always been a democracy and whatnot, but people are actually having it lucky. There's capitalism and whatnot. It's completely different in other sides of the world. And you're always going to be influenced by the type of environment you grew up in, right? And the type of resources, and also what type of opportunities are going to be available to you. But hustle is hustle everywhere in the world, right? It's universal. But what were the first influences that you remember, and who influenced you the most in the way you do your work in hustle and now?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. And for starters, I would say that probably by nature and out of necessity, the majority of people that grew up in the same context as majority of Bulgarians that grew up in the 90s are on average bigger hustlers than anyone else in a different context. Why? Right. Because it's an environment in which you can only rely on yourself, your wits, your skill set in order to progress in life. There is no government support system that can help you. There's barely any industry in the country because it's transitioning from post-communistic to, modern market economy type of society. So you need to learn how to navigate these type of systems and basically solve problems from a very early age. We're conditioned to constantly solve problems that are naturally occurring in the environment around us. And I would say that it wouldn't be a particular person that has influenced the way I have shaped in my later years. It was just growing up in that pretty difficult context where, for example, you need to go to school. There is a couple of guys on every corner that are looking to get your lunch money. You need to find the most optimal route in order to dodge them, while at the same time it's negative 10 degrees outside. So you can't really run or anything like this. So when you grow up in that context, after that, by the time you're a teenager, I suppose you have a pretty solid way of understanding how to navigate difficult situations.
Right. That's street smarts right there. That's how you also navigate life. So I love it. So walk us through the first after college, right? What are the first few hustles that you remember doing, and how did that influence you in terms of the skills you developed that basically added? Because if you're a street smart guy, you're a problem solver, that's a solid foundation that translates very well to entrepreneurship. But what are the other skills that you develop over time, especially as you started to take on more jobs?
Yeah. So for starters, I studied in University of Sofia, which is the most one of the oldest universities in definitely the oldest one in the Balkan Peninsula, one of the oldest institutions in Europe. I graduated European Studies, which is kind of like a political science type of major. And it's completely useless in Southeast Asia. What you study if you want to become a diplomat or if you want to work in a institution of the European Union, basically.
Right.
However, I was always very inclined to solving problems and basically finding opportunities on a market, gathering a group of people. Figuring out what's the best way to solve a problem, and then executing. So very early on, actually in my second year in college or in university, me and a couple of friends of mine started a marketing agency it worked very much like a pre-digital Groupon. We'd gather 50 different spa salons, hairstyling studios, gyms, clubs, and so on. We would put a coupon card. We'll ask them to give discounts to our customers. We'll put coupons in a cart and then sell that coupon cart on various kind of people on the street during events, etc., etc. So that was I started this when I was 20 years old.
Wow!
It was my first entrepreneurial experience, which crashed and burned within, I think, less than 1 year, as it normally happens when you have a couple of kids trying to learn something that have absolutely no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's the same. I'm on my third startup now. My first startup took me it lasted 6 years, but my God, I'm an MBA and all the fuck ups that you can do, I pretty much did. What were the biggest fuck ups that you remember doing, and what are the lessons? Because it forces you to grow up and level up very, very fast after you eat a lot of humble pie very early on, because you come in as a very raw founder. And a lot of the founders that are listening to, if they're in your long 20s, if you're struggling, that's okay. We all went through that too. And what that would teach you is going to be very, very important for your next moves or your next startup. So that's all right. But what were those for you, Christo?
Correct. Well, I would probably isolate 3 different things. The first one is you need to make sure that you have a recurring business model.
Yes. Cash flow, baby.
Ours was very much a one-off. And when we got the pricing wrong, it became very, very difficult to pivot away from it. And that's the first part. The second part is you gotta make sure that you have runway in.
Yes.
And as you can imagine, for 19, 20-year-olds in Eastern Europe didn't have much runway. So very, very quickly after probably within the first year or so, some of my co-founders had to start looking for jobs that take away their focus from our endeavor. And the third one, which was actually I would say a beneficial thing, is know when to pivot. Ultimately, what we ended up doing is we saw that our cards or our coupon vouchers are not selling particularly well, but a lot of clubs or nightlife actually likes to give them away as rewards for their VIP customers. So we started organizing parties in clubs, and we would embed our cards as the reward, but we would also take a cut both from the turnover that night, and we would also charge a cover charge. So ultimately, we ended up organizing parties for a couple of months, which we broke even on any investment that we've done, and we had a really fun summer. So that's, I guess, the third part is you gotta know when your initial business model doesn't work out and you need to do something, and listen to the market, see what the market wants, what it needs, and just do that.
I love it. My first startup was a nightlife app here in the Philippines. It's called Party File. Got people into the best clubs, the guest lists, and the VIPs. So I totally understand the grind, and I want to understand because nightlife taught me so much and these are like baseline skills that I remember and I still use till now. Like, for example, in nightlife, there's no such thing as being timid or shy. Your only chance at success is shooting your shot. And what I learned to do in a club or an event where I don't know who this person is, but I'm going to shoot my shot and let's see what happens. Because I sold VIP access similar to you. So I would put up a fucking booth outside a club, give them all access to all the clubs that are, say, here in BGC and whatnot. And people will get that access for one night. They don't know me. They don't know if I'm a scammer, but people understood. And also, what I really mastered in that nightlife taught me is how to read a room. Who are the people that technically dictate the pace? Who are there to just be technically wallflowers or be fillers? And how to navigate and how to influence a room without having to create a scene, right? It's that savvy that I can, and especially if I go to startup events, that instinct kicks in right away. So I look at, all right, shouldn't we talk to that person? And I instantly create a kill list of who I need to talk to, how I'm gonna get in, who will be my wingman, how will I use that person as a wingman all the way through. These are skills that are not taught, but it's learned on the ground because nightlife is a grind, but if you master it, and if you don't get high on your own supply, you're going to be just fine. What were those skills that nightlife taught you?
Well, we didn't do it for particularly long, but I've always been a very social, extroverted person. Like I get along with a lot of people and organizing large groups of people. And that's something that I would say it kicked in that type of setup. It's also that it's a lot easier to, build relationships with people. I actually even push product if they're having fun and if they like you, compared to if they, in a super formal setting, let's say in an office, etc. So that was another very, very valuable outcome. And I would say a lot of valuable lessons in general from that very early and maybe to a certain degree almost meaningless entrepreneurial experience in the context of my whole lifetime, but quite a lot of things that eventually played a big role in life.
No, for sure. And you're right. I forgot that point that nightlife is a game of being likable. Yeah. Because if you are not likable, how will people gravitate towards you? And when you master the skill of being likable, it's easy to upsell and get people to buy in. Now, if you're able to do that, you can translate into hiring, translate into sales, translate into everything else. That again, and when you have that in your bag, instantly just lock it in. All right, let's take our first break, and when we come back, we will now talk about why Christo and how Christo ended up from Sofia to Manila. Well, let's talk about that more after the break. Hey hustlers, are you a busy entrepreneur juggling a ton of tasks while trying to keep your finances in check? Thinking of raising money from investors or lenders but have no idea how to start? Well, you are not alone. Managing business finances is tough. But don't worry, I got something for you. Introducing One CFO, the leading fractional CFO service and technology provider for SMEs, startups, and scale-ups in the Philippines. Whether you need help with financial management, fundraising strategy, or scaling up operations, their team of top-tier CFOs and their game-changing CFO tech platform have got you covered. And they're legit because I've heard about them from a lot of YC startups actually that got founded in the Philippines, because they've helped a ton of VC-backed startups, scale-ups, and some of the best SMEs in the country reach new heights. One CFO is your strategic financial partner, providing the insights, guidance, and the tools you need to make smarter decisions and drive growth. Plus, they offer personalized support tailored to what your business needs, no matter the size. And what's the best part? It won't break the bank. One CFO services are affordable and accessible to businesses of all sizes. So if you're ready to level up your business and finances, what are you waiting for? Schedule a free CFO consultation with One CFO. Visit onecfoph.co today That's 1CFOPH.co today to get your free CFO consultation. And we're back from the break. We are still with Christo Georgiev. Then told us the origin story of hustling in Sofia, Bulgaria. But I want to understand now. I'm looking at your LinkedIn. After your first couple jobs, you ended up in Manila. I don't know a lot of Balkans out here. Majority of the time, if I do bump into one, majority of the time, they're Serbian, and we talk about basketball. Yeah, those Serbians love their basketball, man. And I'm usually looking up like, whoa, hey, bro, it's huge. But what brought you to Manila, and how was that first experience going from, the Balkan Peninsula where harsh winters can happen to warm ass Manila where we're always sweating?
Yeah, I mean, it was really serendipitous, to be honest. I was, after my startup gig, I was working for a company called Playtech in Bulgaria, which is one of the, maybe even today, the largest B2B software provider for online casinos, sportsbook, poker, etc. So a lot of the major brands in Europe were using their technology. They had a tech development center and an operations center where I was working with in Bulgaria.
Okay.
And they decided to open up an operation in the Philippines, and that was Paragon IC, which, by the way, exists up until even today. So in order to set up that operation, there needed to be some formal knowledge transfer, essentially. Right. And as part of that, myself and a group of another couple of Bulgarians came in the Philippines in the very early 2013. So 12 years ago for the first time. And I came exactly from -5, -10 degrees, the peak of Bulgarian winter, landed in Manila at close to 30 degrees at night. And I'm like, I'm never going to leave. I'm just going to stay here.
And you don't have to buy a bunch of other clothes. You can just be wearing t-shirts the whole time.
Correct. No, it was obviously didn't go exactly like this. Originally, I was supposed to be here for a couple of months and just help set up the operation, recruit, train, supervise. And after I'd go back to Bulgaria and maybe travel occasionally once, twice a year. Around a year and a half into the process, it was pretty clear that it's not going to work out exactly this way. There was all the challenges of setting up an early operation with a team that's not Filipino and that has never been in the Philippines kicked in. So it was a very fast crash course into basically getting to know the local culture, the local working ethics, and basically how to make sure that you build a team of high performers, with which, by the way, the Philippines, up until this very day, I'm fully convinced the Philippines is absolutely full of. So. But how do you get to draw that part out and make it the center of what a professional experience is? Mm-hmm. That takes a little bit of time and a little bit of learning.
No, that's true. I'm curious about the challenges you had to go through, because yes, there's always going to be positives. Philippines, hardworking, affordable market. They don't good English. We all know the tropes. Yeah, but you're technically thrown into a situation where you had nothing as a baseline. And 2013, you cannot ask ChatGPT how to set this up for you. You have to you can search, but there's still not enough. What were the things that you remember going through a lot that were very, very challenging?
So there's a couple of things I remember vividly up until today. And the first one is, it struck me as people took work commitments very differently than where I come from. There, in general, you say, okay, I'm being offered a job, I accept. That means the day after, I'm going to show up in that office and I'm going to go to work. Yep. I realize in the Philippines, maybe 50% of the time, that's not necessarily going to happen.
Nope. So they like to take their time.
Yeah, they like to take their time, or they have multiple offers, so they want to wait out and go to the one where basically has the most favorable conditions, they have the most friends in. And at the time, I thought that this is wrong. But over time, I actually realized, no, you're in a market economy. You want to make sure that you make the best choice for yourself and your family. It's absolutely natural. Just it wasn't inherently understood. So that was one learning part. The second one was I downplayed how big of a difference it makes the location of someone's home when they're working,
especially in Manila.
Especially in Manila. And like in the initial couple of interviews, we never ask people where they live and whether that's gonna affect their ability to come to work or to be in the office on time. And then pretty soon we realized that that's a critical mistake, because if people have to commute for 4 hours to come to work, most of the time they're either going to be late or they're going to be underslept and not performing particularly well.
Correct.
So that's another thing that I remember quite vividly. And the third one is the Bulgarian culture in general is quite direct. And that translates both into personal as well as into professional environment. Now, it's generally acceptable to shout at somebody in the office as long as you're trying as long as you're not being rude. So you can shout without being rude. And as long as it's for, achieving a commonly desired objective or solving a problem. Now, in the Philippines, I realized that that's a massive no-no. And the moment that someone does that, people quit like faster than you can finish your sentence. And so I had to really readjust and tone down a lot of my communication style in order to make sure that basically I get along with all my peers and I get along with my team, and everyone knows they're in a safe working environment as opposed to in a place where their boss is going to shout at them or something like that.
No, totally agree. I'm a Filipino, but I had to also tone down, because the way I also got I have a double whammy. So I have a short fuse before, I have a very long fuse now, and I like to cuss. So like, who is this Filipino who likes to fucking cuss and who has a short fuse? And what I remember, and again, hindsight is always 2020, but I lost a lot of my early good employees because I wasn't able to communicate better, because I let my emotions or my temper get the best of me, out of the result of wanting to win, of wanting to be able to achieve what we need to be. Now, had I learned how to become more say toned down and adapt to the culture that I'm with, I would have probably had some of those back. So again, those are the things that if I look back like, man, what would have been if I just learned how to do that? But again, hindsight's always been 2020. I'm a better version of that dude now. So I just learned how to be zen, or you're like, no, don't fucking say something, or just remove myself from that situation, because the cost of human capital, especially if you're able to create a great team, is very huge. Just because you snap or you forgot to have your poise in front of them. Okay, now after Paragon, did you go back to Europe, to the UK and whatnot?
Yeah, after Paragon, I spent a couple of years with PokerStars, which at the time was the biggest online poker room in the world.
Yep.
It was seemed like too good of an opportunity to pass on. Side, of course, it was really didn't like London as a place to live. I'm pretty sure if I had ended up in the UK after living in Bulgaria and I had never been in the Philippines, I would have probably still been there. But after being in the Philippines and going back to the UK, I was like, that's absolutely not meant to be. I kept coming back to Manila. I had made a lot of friends in the country. So most of my holidays I would spend either in Bulgaria or in the Philippines, not really where I was living. And at some point, it didn't really feel like it felt like a great place to work in, but not really a good place to live in. I thought, okay, I was 27 at the time. Right. I'm still at the stage in life where it makes sense to make more decisions and not entirely financially or career driven. So ultimately, I came back to the Philippines and I started my own management consulting company that was helping online operators with their operations, with their marketing, with their strategy, basically with whatever they needed.
Okay, so now this is your second company.
And that was my second company. And that's what I did for a couple of years. And then, funnily enough, another Bulgarian company came to the Philippines.
Wow. Okay.
So that company was called Cash Credit, and in the Philippines it was known as Pera-Agat, and it was one of the first digital lenders in the Philippines market. It was before the Cashalos, the Talas, the Digitals.
Right.
There was Pera-Agat, and it's a subsidiary of the largest Bulgarian NBFI, called Cash Credit, which came up with a very innovative business model of assessing borrower credit risk in our home country. That business model was, after the economic crisis of 2008, 2009, all the banks in Bulgaria went risk off. About half of the population didn't have a bank account. The other half did. So for people that didn't have a bank account, there was a very big financial inclusion gap, very similarly to what we've seen in the Philippines in even more recent years. And the hypothesis of the company is that actually there is quite a lot of good borrower base, and you just need to find some sort of a reputation criteria based on which you can assess their credibility or creditworthiness and their repayment behavior. So what everyone in the country had at the time was a SIM card. And this company essentially started with a partnership with the local telecoms, started offering loans based on the behavior or based on the information, subscriber, are you prepaid or postpaid? Do you top up a lot, or do you top up frequently? Do you use a lot of data, etc., etc.? So the exact same business model they translate in the Philippines. I'm saying they because at the time they were we were in the same social circle, but we didn't work together. The same business concept was translated in the Philippines in partner. There could be multiple reasons. Founder of that company told me, you know what? We are going to repivot the business into a credit information business. Do you want to join us and run that new business model as a co-founding team? And let's see what we can do. I didn't know much about the fintech space in the country. I was very interested in Web3 and crypto at the time, and I understood a little bit what the challenges of the Philippines are. But soon enough, we figured out, okay, there is actually a really big gap in the market in terms of accessibility to high quality information to decision making. We can use our partnerships with the telcos in order to solve that problem. And essentially, that's how FinScore was born. FinScore was the company I was managing basically for the last 5 years prior to starting LenderLink.
Wow, that's amazing. But at this time now, so that's been a while, but and the total lending landscape has also changed. What are the biggest changes that you remember seeing? Because again, especially during the pandemic, the whole fintech game has exploded, or in good and bad terms. I want to see your perspective on that, and what are the things that I guess obviously the credit scoring is still a problem, but what are different now? What are the things that are different now compared to how you started out April 2019?
Yeah. So there's a couple of very big differences compared to 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And the biggest one I would say is at the time, there were just not that many lending options. There was no digital banks.
Correct.
E-wallet usage and market penetration was pretty low. I mean, most people had at least Gcash, but nobody was using it in the same capacity that they use today.
Yep.
And there was a lot less lenders. There were just less players offering their services on the market. That's one very big difference. Most of the time, the credit options that Filipinos would have are if they're bankable, they would be able to get a loan from a bank or credit card product. And if they don't, then they would have to go to a 5-6 or borrow from friends and family. These were pretty much the options that existed at the time. And in the last 5 years, they have massively changed. Now, I would say the informal part of the credit and the lending space has moved significantly under the D segment, economic segment. And everyone else actually has pretty decent access to multiple options to borrow both as an individual as well as a SME or an MSME. And with the majority of options coming into the market, of course, a new set of challenges come up for both individuals as well as for lenders. On the individual side is how to make sure that, you can afford the exorbitant interest rates that are typically standard on the market, and how do you make sure that you borrow from a trusted partner that is that you can build a long-standing relationship with, and eventually continue extending your credit to meet the needs of your family or your business. And for lenders was how to make sure that you lend money profitably on the Philippines market without constantly having people default on their loans. And that was that's how the ecosystem has evolved since then.
I love it. And again, you described just how the difference is very stark. But regardless of how many options there are, if people cannot, if institutions or platforms cannot trust people because they cannot gauge their riskiness per se on if they're a risky client to lend to or not, then it's a big problem. But before we talk about how you then scratch the itch and do this on your own with LenderLink, I'm very, very curious, because leading a company for 5 years and 7 months will through multiple that's pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. Those are like 3 different lives that you had to go through. How did you change as a leader, and how did you evolve coming from what you were like 2019 to October 2024 when you decided to leave?
Oh, it's been absolutely the most productive and growth-driven period of my life by any shape and form. For starters, it was a new industry, and while FinScore's products were pretty popular on other markets, they were entirely novel in the Philippines. We're the absolute first company to partner with telecoms, and just to introduce the concept of, hey, you can make decisions based on alternative data sources. That process was not at all popular in the country. So that was one very big challenge that had to be overcome with a lot of grit and a lot of market making, essentially, and market education. The second part, I would say that it changed for me personally was this was my first proper long-term startup journey,
right?
That went through all the different ups and downs of the roller coaster. From having the first client to having 10 clients to having all 10 clients stopping their lending simultaneously because it's pandemic and it's not certain who's going to have their job, to having to essentially wipe out 80% of our operation, relocate myself, most of our team back to Bulgaria in order to be able to survive, through managing account payables and account receivables to extend our runway because there's no investors that want to back companies during the pandemic. So we lived through all of that together with the rest of the fantastic team in FinScore. And eventually, just after the pandemic, where it almost seemed that we are in a perpetual standstill, the market skyrocketed. All lenders started. There were double the amount of lenders that there were just before the pandemic. Everyone had already gotten used to transacting digitally, which was not the case before. Right. Gcash was super popular, Grab, Foodpandas, all these apps that would require digital transactions. The first couple of digital banks were setting up on the market, And all of these kind of catalysts were extremely beneficial for any company that offers information that eventually powers up digital decision making. And post-pandemic, FinScore's trajectory up until this day has been quite positive. The company eventually got acquired in 2023, so we had an exit alongside with the rest of the management team, and that was really a really good journey. So how it changed me profoundly, I would say, in terms of both personal growth as well as in terms of what it actually means to manage an operation or manage a team through all of its ups and downs, both financial, operational, and internal implosions and external market challenges.
That's amazing. And I always, when you go full circle and then go through war, go through hell and out multiple times, and then you exit and you go through an acquisition, it's just like, I always, the analogy I always use is like the Lord of the Rings. You were given a mission to bring a freaking ring, drop it on Mart Mordor, and go back to write a book. You can easily write a book about that whole thing. That whole 5 years probably felt like 15 years because of all the ups and downs that you have to go through. And then that's what's great. But I want to now understand before we take our last break. Christo, when did you start feeling the itch again to start anew, to start technically LenderLink? How did that come into the picture, and what made you decide to, all right, I want to try it again, but this time it's my show?
Yeah. So there were a couple of interesting elements when we were starting FinScore. The country kind of lacked the traditional data rails that would be available in most developed markets. Apart from the CAC still being very early in its development cycle, that was 2019. There was also no national ID was rolled out. There was also no national income registry. Access to, SSS, GSIS, etc., was very sparse. So basically, there was very little information that lenders could use for. As an end result, when we introduced telecom and alternative data credit scoring to the market, most of the digital lenders actually started using it as the primary tool for making decisions. And while this is great for most people, it doesn't allow them, or it doesn't allow them to be able to change their reputation in the same way that they could if decision making is done based on their actual financial information.
Correct.
And when I started discussing with some of the fastest growing fintechs on the market, all of them said the same. Look, we need financial performance history in order to be able to grow and to access to every Filipino. The piece where financial information isn't available is just not an option. So I thought, okay, is that information available today? Yes, it is. Every single lender has already extended large portfolios in the past. They have their own database of customers. They know who are the good guys. They know who are the guys that don't pay back. So why this information is not available anywhere else? There's multiple different reasons, but I can build a platform that connects it, goes straight to the source, makes it available in real time, checks its quality in real time, and actually rewards everyone for sharing information into it. So it's a pretty novel concept, both for credit bureaus internationally, but particularly for the Philippines, which combines data monetization with credit information exchange. And I thought, this is my chance to bring my contribution to ensuring that maybe 5 to 10 years from now, in the Philippines, most borrowers will also be able to be assessed based on their financial history. And most lenders will also be able to use primarily financial information in their decision making rather than behavior that correlates with financial information. And that's how we started.
That's amazing. All right, now let's take our last break, and when we come back, we will now talk about how that origin or start led into LenderLink obviously going to market and how they were able to raise from Kaya founders, and obviously the next steps that will be happening in LenderLink after they try to solve this very huge problem. Let's talk about that more after the break.
Hey hustlers, before we resume the episode, let me tell you a very quick secret. Do you guys ever wonder how we're able to consistently release episode after episode here in Hustleshare without missing a date over the past 3 years? Well, it's not just pure hustle, because I'm also running my podcast along with me running my startup full time. Now, for some of you who have listened to this podcast, you guys very well know that I created a startup that is designed to help the best podcasters in Southeast Asia to realize their full potential, which is called Podcast Network Asia. And over the past couple of years, we've achieved quite a lot in P&A, helping hundreds of podcasters create world-class episodes consistently. However, what we realize is that we are not really solving the real problem of all podcasters in the world if we're not going to productize the thing that we're very good at, which is helping podcasters solve the two main pain points of a podcaster, which is number one, nobody really likes to edit their own show. Especially if you're listening to your own voice. Just like me, I cringe a lot. Having to listen to my voice for 3 to 4 hours just to release a 1-hour episode. It's no fun. And then the other thing is that most podcasters, just like me, are absolutely clueless on how to properly grow their show, which is something that we have perfected in Podcast Network Asia. So we've decided to put this all in one product that helps any podcaster in the world create world-class shows that people will love and will continuously grow. And that's why we created PodMachine. PodMachine is the most affordable podcast subscription service that helps you with your podcasting needs. We've got everything from audio production, crafting designs, and marketing and growth support. So as a podcaster, you can now just focus on the thing that matters the most, creating great content for your listeners. So if you are an existing podcaster or someone that actually wants to create their podcast now, no need to worry. You got a founder's discount by listening here on Hustleshare. So sign up now at podmachine.com. And aside from the free trial that you're going to get as a new user, I'm throwing in another one free edit as soon as you sign up for just as low as $49.99 USD a month to start creating a consistent and world-class podcast. Again, that's podmachine.com and use the code Hustleshare to get your founder discount. So if you have friends that are podcasters and if you want to have a podcast just like this, y'all know what to do. So just go and talk to you guys in PodMachine.
And we're back from the break. We're still with Christo Georgiev, who then told us the amazing journey he went through. Because again, he technically came from the supply side, right? Before he created LenderLink through FinScore, and now he understands this problem because just like FinScore, everybody still has this problem. And just like what I said during the very start of the episode, my reputation didn't really change much after praying out, and I proved to everyone that I can pay this thing. I even paid the whole loan in advance. Like there are platforms that I remember would stagger the payment 5 months in. Like, nah, I'm gonna pay this in 10 days. I just want to be able to see if this will impact my credit score. And guess what? It did not. So out of nowhere, who knows that I'm a good payer in the digital era, but on the traditional ones like a credit union, it still pegged me as a medium risk. I'm like, what the hell? I just fucking proved to everyone that, yo, I got this. We're good. So that's the thing. But I want to understand. So this is obviously a big problem, but knowing that, having gone through the whole 5-year and 7-month process of having FinScore, what did you do differently this time when you launched LenderLink? What did you have different co-founders? How was the approach from 0 to 1, considering that you're technically a repeat founder now? And that's what's interesting, because I always say that here in Hustleshare. If you're a first-time founder, I expect you to fuck it up, because no matter how you think you're prepared, you're gonna be punched in the face so many times more than you think you'd know. But on your second or third try, that's when you know, because you know where the booby traps are. You'll be more humble. You know that this is not going to be a solo journey. You're going to have to equip yourself with a great team and all that. What was different when you launched LenderLink after going through your journey in FinScore?
Yeah, I think one of the first key differences were that I wanted to go after the biggest problem in the space that we were, and providing a holistic solution that solves the biggest problem. Rather than temporary patchwork or a workaround to solve the same problem. We wanted to go right smack the number one problem in that space, and so that's one difference. And in order to solve infrastructural problems, you need to build wide scale digital infrastructure, and it takes resources and it takes time.
Yes.
So in order to be able to have the resources and time to do that, I recognize that unlike FinScore, which was entirely bootstrapped, by the way, or almost entirely bootstrapped, unlike FinScore, I actually need to raise capital, and I need to have strategic partners on our cap table that are going to help me and that are going to have vested interest in the success of that journey.
Right.
And that was another very different strategic decision compared to our thought process in FinScore. And I would say that these were kind of the two things that come really with experience, both in the sector as well as with experience as an entrepreneur. Naturally, it helped a lot that being in the same space, I know most of the players and I know most of the key partners, most of the key suppliers, and I also have a pretty significant talent pool that aided me in hiring quickly in the first critical months of the company. So the go-to market is a lot faster versus FinScore, where essentially the first 1 year I just had to go to meetings and introduce everyone to myself as a complete outsider for the industry, and a product that was also completely unknown to the industry. So all of these things, this is on the positive side. All of these things are actually work out much simpler at the moment.
Yeah, you've been here a long time, and I'm pretty sure you're deep inside. You think you're a Bulgarian Filipino already, because you know the nuances.
I spent a bigger portion of my adult life in the Philippines than in Bulgaria. So absolutely, I'm a Bulgarian.
Bulgarian, and you're Kuya Christo or Tito Christo now, technically.
Correct.
All right. Now I want to understand. So of course you can't do this alone. Well, talk to me about the co-founders that you had to go through this. Again, you already had access to the talent pool. You know what it would be like to create a great team that you go 0 to 1. Because you've been there. You've been through the rodeo. You've been through the finish line. It's like you have the cheat code. Same thing with me. I my third startup, man, everything was so much easier on the parts that I knew what to do. But there's still a lot of uncharted territory. Like, oh shit, at this point, I don't know what happens next. That's where I struggled. But on the ones that I knew where to go, 0 to 1, 0 to 10, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Well, who did you bring along this time? And how did they help you out in getting LenderLink out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's being Eastern European myself, I have a bit of an unfair advantage because there is a very huge tech talent pool in my home country, particularly when it comes down to backend technology, full stack developers, as well as data scientists and machine learning developers, which are the two most critical components that a platform like LenderLink has to be built on. So my co-founders were a team that has actually built some parts of the Bulgarian National Credit Bureau.
What?
And they have maybe combined 20 years of experience in building very, very robust, scalable software products, typically for Silicon Valley startups.
Wow.
That outsource to Bulgaria. And our Petya, our chief data and product co-founder, who is in charge of all the magic behind the models and the data products that we churn out, is ex-Experian and ex-PaySafe, which are both have very large regional headquarters in Bulgaria.
Mm.
So having the right team technologically meant that I can fully embed myself in business development and partner relations,
Right.
fundraising wherever it was necessary, hiring, etc. Knowing that the technology is really well taken care of, it's enterprise level, it's secure, it's data privacy compliant, and it's gonna work like a breeze.
No, for sure. And that's where I have nothing but respect to Eastern Europeans in terms of building tech and product. I remember my second startup was Chatbot PH. One of my contemporaries that I remember, I was the first one here. I got that acquired in 1 year. When I put it up in 2017, got acquired in 2018. And I remember the contemporaries I would go to when I go to the Silicon Valley was like a lot of people from Ukraine. So I was like, whoa, okay, these guys are super good at what they do. And Eastern European is a hub for great product. I remember Greg also of Tonic told me that his back end is not built here. It's from, he's Ukrainian. Told him that, all right, this is where I build product. And unfortunately, in the Philippines, that's one of the things. There's not a lot of great product people here. There's a lot of devs, but they don't understand the full tech stack of how to build product top down that's fast and that's scalable. I think even Salmon doesn't even have their product here, and they built this similar thing from a retail point of view as well.
Most of the fast growing tech startups that originate from Eastern Europe typically have the engineering teams based there. Look, I think there is actually quite a lot of really high level Filipino solutions architects, systems engineers, etc. But they also can work remotely for a Silicon Valley startup on $500,000 a year salary. And so that like value for money type of setup is very important, especially in the early days of every venture, right?
Totally agree. And in order for you to have our best devs are either outsourcing somewhere else or already overseas. Yeah. And it would take a while, or it would take a lot for them to let go of, say, a 7 or a 6-digit salary here. Yeah, to risk it all in a startup. It's rare that you see the best talent that's available to want to do a startup founder, because they know also the risk reward. And there are a few, but majority of the time they still take jobs to make sure that they stay afloat, because you know how risky startups are, especially here in the Philippines. Yeah. But I want to understand now, from the get-go, you mentioned earlier that you knew that this was a venture play, right? You came from a bootstrap company. When you bootstrap, the type of risk averseness and the type of pacing of how you execute is totally different, because that's totally dictated by cash flow. Yeah. If you're able to raise, and your raise is significant enough that allows you to build product and build a team right away, that would really position you to lead or have a great 0 to 10 or 0 to 50 at least. But how did you raise from here? Because it's, again, there are a few VCs in town, which are good. A lot of them are now sophisticated from where they were. They're now in their fund 2, fund 3 stages. And what people don't understand is when VCs become more sophisticated, going to IC or even getting past your first analyst is a totally different ballgame than what it was 3-4 years ago, where you actually sometimes before you'd actually get to pitch IC directly. Yeah. Now that doesn't happen at all. What was that process like? Especially walk us through that process of getting that investment with Kaya, which has one of the most formidable ICs and processes here in the Philippines, along with the others like Foxmont, who are also top notch in what they do. What was that like?
So large scale fundraising, also first time experience for me. So there are generally quite a lot of learning curves, but to be fair, it's not that different from business development. You know, you have to build a very robust pipeline.
Numbers game, baby.
You have to speak to a lot of people. You have to make sure that you clearly present what you're about to do. Yep. And make it easy for them to make the decision, and then just trigger a little bit of FOMO in the right times.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. So it was, even though it was the first time I was raising capital, The playbook I figured out is relatively similar to running enterprise sales, for example.
Yep.
And it just required a couple of adjustments here and there. So the things that did help and that did work out well for me is obviously I had advisors that were putting me in the right type of investors pretty much right away. With Manila Angel Investor Network, with etc. I also spoke to quite a lot of VC from Singapore, and actually we ended up having our lead investor being Iterative VC, which is
you're iterative.
Yes,
What?
yes.
I'm also iterative. Which
Winter 25. You can chat me in Slack.
Oh, I'm summer 24.
Excellent.
We were the ones. We're the only Filipino one in our last cohort. So
Yes,
you're winter 25. So
yeah,
shout out Brian. Shout out Liana. Shout out Suken. Shout out Kathy Go. I love those guys.
Yeah. So you know very well they're a founder-led VC that basically Y Combinator for APAC and the rest of the world. So that helped out a lot, and we were also quite open that for strategic partners, specifically lenders or data source partners in the Philippines, we have a reserved equity, which meant that we can actually have investments coming in from our early adopter users of the platform.
So what was that like? So I remember, man, the hustle that we had to put through in that 3 to 4 month stretch during Iterative for Seria FM. You know, that's what's different. I've never experienced something like that. That every fucking week I cannot go to office hours with my check-in with our mentor and not show week-on-week growth, because it's totally embarrassing when you see everybody else. Like there's FOMO there too. Like, oh my God, they're all killing it, and I'm just like stuck doing this shit. So I remember being super stressed out in a good way to prove that, hey, I need to be able to help. Who was your mentor? Was it Diana?
No, it's Ram, one of the early meta engineers.
Gotcha.
So our platform is very tech heavy, so we have a tech focused mentor.
What was that like? I want to understand, because once you develop that habit of extreme growth, 20% week on week growth, whatever that is, and just to describe to those people what that is, when we do the planning or the retreat or the initial kickoff in Bali, it's gonna be nice until they tell you, hey, plot out the next 12 weeks for y'all, and you need to hit it with the specific metrics. If not, man, you're gonna be regretting if you put the wrong metrics in there and the wrong growth week on week. You're gonna be up for a fight. What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, our product is very interesting because what we optimize for is maximum coverage of records in the platform, and this is something that in general it doesn't happen like that. It takes quite a long time. So our growth trajectory doesn't look like 5 to 10%, 20% week on week. It looks like flat for 5 weeks, 300% in 1 week.
Wow.
For 5 weeks, 400% in 1 week.
Like a ladder.
It's a lot more like a ladder. It's not optimized for week on week growth, but that's also the reason why we need, time, resources, manpower in order to be able to execute with multiple partners simultaneously. I think in terms of an experience as a founder, they're probably both Iterative and Kai are probably the top-notch early stage investors that you can hope for in the Philippines market. And there's quite a few others that would fall in the same category. I mean, Foxmont that you mentioned, Founders Launchpad as well, very prominent one in the Philippines. So I would say any combination of these is you'll be in very good hands and very well supported in the early days.
Yeah, totally. Even the way I pitch, I remember in demo day, because I only had 3 minutes. I'm a storyteller. I'm a long form storyteller. So holy, like, how the fuck do I say everything in 3 minutes? This is my game. We've been talking for like a good hour and a half now, and my God, it was so difficult. So yeah, I had to really adapt, but again, I have nothing but love for iterative as well. But walk me now through the next steps. So after this, what's the next steps for LenderLink? Again, you're very product heavy, and that's what I love. And this is what's lacking sometimes in the Philippines. We're very too much service oriented to a fault, and my business is like that too. But what's next for you guys? And I want to see you guys win this problem because it's such a big thing. Like for me, I experienced it firsthand as a user. Like, man, I just borrowed so much money, and y'all still don't trust me. What the hell? Right? So how far along are you, and what should we look out for in the next coming months as you try to solve this problem?
Well, for starters, the platform is already live.
Nice.
We've aggregated access to around 30 million records for borrowers, which is a very, very significant amount to begin with.
Yep.
And our goal is to triple that in the next 1 year and make sure
those are iterative numbers, huh?
Those are iterative numbers. Triple that in the next 1 year. Make sure that we have around 90 to 95% coverage on the Philippines market.
Wow.
And build connectivity to every ecosystem that has borrower credit information and make it available to our platform. So the problem with that you experienced with TransUnion is not because TransUnion is inherently bad. It's because it doesn't connect to all the other ecosystems. Yep. So ultimately, we'll be able to link LenderLink to TransUnion, and then they'll be able to receive all the information that you get also in non-TransUnion members, in non-carded,
so I don't have to file a dispute.
Correct. So that's what the plan is for the next 1 year. Increase our coverage, increase the number of members on our platform, and increase the number of essentially data suppliers that provide access to the platform. And from there on, there is a couple of other very interesting segments in the fintech space. The SME lending and the accessibility of information there is a much bigger disaster, frankly, than the retail space. So that would be a logical next step for us to look into.
Okay, last question before I let you go. Again, you just recently, you're fresh off of that fundraising process. You probably still are fundraising. But what would be your tip? Because again, it's really hard now, considering this economy. People thought it was gonna be okay. Like, yes, Trump's gonna fix this whole thing. And not until the tariffs came in. Now it's a fucking tariff war. And in any type of economy where there's so much uncertainty, there's always going to be a lot of scared money from investors, especially that VCs fall into the riskiest asset class in anywhere, in any type of investment portfolio. But you were able to get it done. What would be your advice for people fundraising right now? And how are you navigating this for yourself?
Yeah. Well, first advice is always think very, very clearly whether you need VC money or you can bootstrap or you need angel money. I would say 100% very, very important first decision. So VC money generally, if you need to fuel in hyper growth or if you're building infrastructure, that's the two ways in which, or the two options in which I would say you definitely need VC money. Yep. In any other case, maybe better to go the angel route or the FFF route.
Yep.
That's the first part I would say. The second part is, I mean, it's a lot of people say it's a numbers game, but I feel it's really underrepresented. Most of the time, you're asking someone that you've never met to hop on a call with you on the internet and give you anywhere between 50 grand to $500,000, usually on an early stage. There are 1,000 other companies, maybe 10,000 other companies like you. There is a couple of hundred of these guys. Like, it's absolutely normal that you need to speak to as many people as possible. And a lot of the times when I speak to early stage founders, they're like, well, I had these 2 meetings in the last 2 months.
Oh, no.
I'm like, dude, that's it. No, that's just never going to work. It's never going to work. You need to have all these meetings. You need to very carefully listen to the type of feedback, to the type of questions that are being asked, and constantly reiterate both your product as well as your pitch in order to match the right type of narrative that immediately makes it clear what you're offering, and that gets you to a yes. And the third advice I would give is use the first yes to get all the other yeses.
Yes, leverage it.
Leverage it massively.
Absolutely. And if you have a really good lead investor, everybody else just follows. Again, Christo, thank you very much for such an amazing episode. But again, you guys are out to market, and a lot of people, a lot of companies even use this. Come on, let's just fucking centralize this thing, because it's so pathetic. A lot of people are able to have access to credit, but if you look at them and the way we traditionally measure credit scoring, it doesn't even register. So if they want to work with you, where do they go and how do they do that?
Yeah, so they go to lenderlink.ph and they just put a book a demo, and we'll get in touch with them. They can connect with me on LinkedIn at Christo Georgiev, and they can also send me an email at christo@lenderlink.ph.
There you go. And my fellow iterative brother. There you go. So again, thank you very much, Christo. But before I let you go, follow us whenever podcast app you're listening to, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if we did say some jargon, it's going to be the show notes on hustleshare.com. If you also want to support Hustleshare and doing content like this, please do subscribe at premium.hustleshare.com. Again, Christo, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ronstar.
All right. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.